Good evening. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that we hope will help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid. Here's my co-host, Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave.
Hello.
What's going on? Well, there's a lot going on, Dave. So much going on in the news, and AI and technology is playing such a huge role in so much. But what did you want to lead off with today?
Well, I wanted to lead off in the news, but I think I want to let news speak for itself once we put it into context. The Times had a very strong piece on hate speech and some examples that I'll read to you in a minute. But that's something we've talked about a lot. It matters a lot. What is your sense of what hate speech is and what should be done about it, Stu?
We've talked about this a lot, Dave, going back over the years. I think it should be regulated. I know that early on, I'm say early on, maybe going back 5, 6, 7 years, you and I talked on the air on this show about how there should be no censorship, no control of content. But since that time, we've seen the rise of so much hate speech, both foreign and domestic, and it gets amplified in incredible ways over the internet, and with the algorithms in particular that kind of pick up on this stuff. A lot of it gets amplified way beyond its real significance in my mind. So I think something needs to be done. And in my mind, hate speech has to do with the denial of the humanity and of basic rights of people to live and to prosper. Yeah, so basically, Dave, I believe that hate speech is something that needs to be regulated on the internet. Over the years, we've seen it amplified in incredible ways by the algorithms that seem to kind of boost up sensationalistic talk and sensationalistic conversation. And I think it works to really dehumanize so many folks.
Now, you've said to me about some things you've been seeing in video. Suddenly, people all around the world can log onto the internet and see whatever video they want to see.
Yeah. Historically, and you and I are old enough to remember, Dave, we go back and we remember the Vietnam War and how the impact of the images of the war on the 6 o'clock news. Back then, there was no video. This is the late 1960s. There was no video, there was film. Film had to be sent over, had to be developed and processed. So it took a few hours for it to make it to the air. So it was probably less than a 24-hour delay, but there was some delay. It was not, no way was it real time. But those images on the 6 o'clock news in the 1960s really brought the war home for United States citizens. And we actually could see what was going on and see the impact. And I believe it had a huge effect on turning the sentiment of the country against the Vietnam War and helping to ultimately end that conflict. Fast forward
Well, it
today.
took a long time to end that conflict.
Oh, it sure did. It sure did.
I was
But
on,
but
I
but I
was,
think I think the media played a positive role in showing some of those images. Before it made it to the 6 o'clock news, we were just reading about it in the paper. It was really, in my mind, just very kind of abstract and distant. And it was easy for the average citizen to kind of dismiss it or not really become emotionally involved with the policies of this country. But once the images made it on the TV and you started seeing folks dying, you started seeing the body bags, folks started to wake up and really kind of pay attention, I think, on a much more visceral and emotional level.
well,
And
we haven't seen too many body bags from the recent American wars in
yeah,
Iraq
I
and
think they stopped.
Afghanistan.
I think there was some government regulation, Dave, that prohibited the filming of the body bags, going back to the Desert Storm and the more recent wars in the Middle East, Afghanistan, etc., where the media was prohibited from filming the body bags and the coffins as they were coming back.
The first casualty of any war is the truth.
Mm,
And we
good point.
saw it very dramatically in the last 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
The Israelis have sent their troops into the hospital in Gaza. The Israelis claim that the pictures they have of weapons assembled were from the hospitals, and that's why they had to destroy the hospitals. The Palestinians said, we did not have those weapons in the hospital. It was not an arms depot. The Israelis are lying. And the problem for all of us is there's no way for us to know. Even the reporters on the ground, and most of them have been kept far away, uh, can't necessarily find the correct answers. And you and I probably can't. So, one of the things we're worried about AI creating fake news. I'm used to governments creating fake news. One of Winston Churchill's great victories was the fake tanks that they put poised to invade France in a place they hadn't no intention of going.
Really?
And they actually did make plastic balloons that looked just like tanks from the air. And the Germans did take some of their forces that set them against where they thought this British invasion would come, and had fewer forces available to fight on Normandy Beach.
Well,
So,
Dave, then that's a little different, isn't it? I mean, that's trickery and deceit, but you're tricking and deceiving the enemy combatants, not the general public.
oh, but I think the enemy combatants are exactly who they're aiming this at.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, among those people who have very strongly talked about the need to stop the fighting in Gaza are the Prime Minister of Ireland and the President or Prime Minister of Canada just the other day. And the President of the United States has called for a ceasefire. Mm. But these are the things that should Twitter let all this go out on Twitter? I think our listeners have as much a right at opinion as either of us. But let me give you another example, also from the Times, of what I think is hate speech. I despise it, although I'm not sure I think it should be censored. I really don't know. He has declared that migrants are poisoning the blood of our country. A phrase that, to steal from the immortal Molly Ivans, probably might have sounded better in the original German. And on Saturday, the Times reported that Trump, if returned to office, intends to pursue drastic anti-immigration policies, scouring the country for undocumented immigrants and building huge camps to, and I'm not going to throw the word in there because it's a very powerful word, keep them in before deporting them by the millions. And that is the kind of thing that happens when you, as you said, dehumanize people. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Frankly, I've known a lot of illegal immigrants. Here in New York, it was never an issue. Mm-hmm. I remember a news report that said 1 million of 8 million New Yorkers were immigrants without papers. I don't know if it was really that high, but it was something we all saw all the time. I knew the Dominican who did all my truck repairs didn't have papers, and he could only work for cash. Mm-hmm. And I knew, well, I know a lovely kindergarten teacher who is my neighbor, who came here from Brazil 30 or 40 years ago. I've known her that long. And I asked her who she was voting for when I saw her on an election day. And she said, "Oh, no, I can't vote. I never became a citizen."
Mm,
And that was a lovely lady who was a kindergarten teacher.
hmm hmm
Far more immigrants are like the hardworking truck mechanic or the kindergarten teacher than any of the images that we're
Yeah.
hearing.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Dave, this country was founded by immigrants. A point that seems to get lost when folks are talking about that. But all the founding fathers were immigrants and not native to this land and this soil. So
Or
I mean,
second generation. Many of
mhm,
them were parents or grandparents had come over. But
mhm.
Alexander Hamilton was born in the West Indies.
You say
He
Alexander
probably,
Hamilton? Hmm.
yep,
Yeah.
he probably would not be able to get into the United States today.
Hmm.
And
But I just
that's
want to address an earlier point that you were making, Dave, about hate speech and some of the stuff coming out of Donald Trump's mouth in terms of immigrants poisoning the blood of the purebred in this country and what he intends to do. I think that stuff
let me
needs to
stop you
be.
there. Let me stop you there because I think anybody listening to this can draw their own conclusions just from the words that we read.
Okay, I,
I
I
don't
I don't
think
I don't want to. I'm not characterizing that. All I'm saying is that speech needs to be heard, particularly because we're talking about a person that could become potentially the next president of the United States. So I think we need to hear everything coming out of his mouth so that folks can make their own determination, as you're saying, and their own calculation as to how fit this guy is for office.
ah, and this was a hard one to talk about because we all are seeing horrible things happening. And
Hmm.
both sides in that war have done horrendous things.
Yeah,
But
we're talking about the video of the war and how it has, over the decades, been transformed from next day film to real time now live video as to what's going on. And some of the things that we're also seeing is a lot of fakery in the reporting, and some of the news organizations have actually set up divisions to actually confirm and to verify reporting and video that they're saying. CBS has something called CBS News Confirmed, and the BBC has something called BBC Verify Unit. All of these units the purpose is to confirm what we're looking at and whether we can actually believe our lioness eyes or not. The story in I think this is in the Times reported that there was some images of bodies, dead Palestinians covered in white shrouds, and one of the bodies mysteriously moved. And then there was a Palestinian actor who was seriously wounded in a hospital bed one day, walking unharmed the next day. So all of this
uh,
raises questions about fake video and fake news.
yeah, at least one of those has been researched, and the way it was reported is apparently not true. But that's the lesson we have to pass on
Hmm.
to our listeners. It is very hard to know what's true, but horrible things are happening that we are responsible for, and we should do what we can. Let's go on to other kinds of news that's not
Okay.
so painful. Okay, an outfit called Humane. Did you see this one?
No, what's that?
It has what they call an AI pin. You can wear it on your wrist, and it can project on your hand the things that might go on the screen.
Wait,
Or
back
project.
up there. This what kind of device is this?
It looks like a little watch.
Uh-huh.
It's really the guts of a mobile phone with a small projector, but no screen.
Hmm.
And it it's basically controlled, doesn't have a keyboard either, by voice, which is getting better and better.
And what does it project?
The words that you would have wanted to see on the screen of the mobile phone, but
Hmm.
it's much smaller. It doesn't because it doesn't have a screen.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunately $600 plus $24 a month. So it's an interesting idea. I'm not going to go out and buy it. Uh, Sad news, but maybe okay. Steve Wozniak, Woz, who co-founded Apple, had a small stroke.
Mm.
He's at home and doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Get well, Steve.
Yeah, sounds like he was the real brains behind Apple, but didn't have the charisma and the panache of Jobs.
He did all the engineering. Jobs
Mm.
was not an engineer,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the engineering was genius work. He
Mm.
made a totally different kind of disk drive because he needed a disk drive, and the ones in the market were too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
He reimagined the disk drive. Now, what about nuclear power? It was a long article, I think in the Times, yes, in the Times, about how maybe it's coming back or maybe it isn't. And most of the article was people who were enthusiastic about the currently being designed small nukes, which they say are safer. Well, the reason I brought it to the show is the Times ended with a quote that to solve the climate problem, it's necessary to go to nuclear power. It's not.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Dave, I just want to mention while you're talking about that, I began to watch a series. I haven't finished it, but on one of the streaming services, there's a series called Chernobyl, which tells
Oh,
all
that
of
was
the backstory behind that event. You and I were around back in the 80s when that happened, a nuclear disaster in Russia, and there was so
be
much.
careful there. It is in Ukraine, which at
Okay,
that point was in
yes,
Russia.
in Ukraine. I stand corrected. But this docudrama, based on what really happened, just very harrowing in terms of the devastation and how they had to what they had to do, what the authorities had to do to ameliorate and contain the fallout and disaster. It is so frightening. And we got no visibility into that, no glimpse into that whatsoever while it was happening. But this docudrama, Chernobyl, it's either on Prime or HBO Max, one of the streaming services. I highly recommend it to folks. It's a little dark, if you will, but it's a true story about what happened during a nuclear accident. You know, there was a nuclear accident in Japan about 10 years ago or so.
Did
So it
you
only takes one or two accidents to really potentially change the face of the earth. So, you know, I don't know where you stand on that, but I'm thinking that, we really need to find alternatives to nuclear power.
Well, let's speak to that because that's something that came up in the Times and also in another story that I have that's directly related. The Times pointed out that with all the containment shells and other things they feel they need to build a nuclear plant, it's actually already more expensive than
Mm.
building solar power
Hmm.
almost anywhere.
Hmm.
And the Times quoted somebody who says, yes, but what happens at night? What happens to hydropower when there's a drought?
Storage, come on, battery storage.
And in fact, another story that I just saw was about battery storage, which is
Hmm.
working quite well. There's also pump storage and lots of other ways to store energy, and suggested that with now all those electric cars, which have big batteries in them, and things like school buses, which usually aren't doing anything on the weekend or the evenings. Pump them full of electricity
Hmm.
during the day or anytime it's available, and it will be available when you need it.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
So I'm not going to argue whether nuclear power is right or wrong. I tend to worry about it more than I tend to support it. But people who are capable and smart, including the Times climate reporter who wrote this story, disagree with me. But it definitely is not necessary.
Yeah.
That's
You take a look at this Chernobyl miniseries on streaming service, and I think you will come away with, okay, we don't need to even be dabbling in this technology. The risks are just too extreme and too high. But Dave, we got to take a break. We're about halfway into our show. This Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM with Dave
when we
Burstein and
come
Stu
back.
Reid.
I've got the details of what happened in the actors' strike and artificial
Okay.
intelligence and a lot of things like that.
Excellent, excellent. So stay tuned. More to come on Community and Technology. We're going to take a brief musical break. Stay tuned.
Life is like a song to sing with measured beats and phrases and bended notes and some repeats. Music through the ages that brings the highs, the lows, the swells. Sometimes it's for an ending, bringing other songs to sing, ascending, descending. I'm learning how to listen, how to hear a melody, how to hear the song I'm singing, how to feel and let it be, and listen to the song, knowing how it goes, and listen for the melody that flows. Music is a lover with shiny golden wings that whispers in the lover's ear and dances when it sings, and sings a variation on an everlasting theme. It's either love or sorrow on the scene. Learning how to listen for the songs I name and sign and claim as a possession and say that they are mine, 'cause everybody knows that songs come from out of the blue, and I'm learning how to hear the changes too. I'm learning how to listen to the rhythm of the night, how to keep it simple, how to make it sweet and light, smooth and free and easy, or slamming in the jam. And oh, for just a moment, the music that I am. learning how to rise above and wear somebody's shoes, learning how to listen, for the song was given me. I'm learning how to listen and be free. I'm learning how to listen, how to hear a melody, how to hear the song I'm singing, how to feel and let it be, and listen for the song, knowing how it goes, and listen for the melody that flows, and listen for the melody that flows.
Okay, we're back. Community and Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid. Before the break, we were talking quite a bit about hate speech and whether or not that should be regulated and what is it. And Dave, I think you had some other comments you wanted to mention.
I just wanted to make it very clear. You should not listen, or maybe you should, but the fact that I'm on the radio does not make my opinion on what's happening in Israel and Gaza more reliable than yours. You should make up your own mind. Well, let me take that to the actors' strike, because I've got the details on that.
Mm-hmm.
The longest actors' strike in history is over.
How long was it, Dave?
Oh, I don't know, 100
I think
something.
I think it's 118 days from what I'm looking at.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
And there were lots of issues there. One of the toughest, and it went down to the wire on this, was could actors be replaced by AI? And the answer technically is absolutely. At this point, it's pretty hard and expensive to take a featured actor and replicate them, but that's going to happen very soon. I don't know whether it's 2 years or 8 years before that's easy. But it's possible today to do that with the minor parts. I was just watching Foundation, beautifully shot series that Apple has out based on the Asimov novel. So we were watching it last night. And I looked at the screen where there were the main characters in front giving a speech, and there was a load of people in the background listening. Were those people just created on the computer, or did they bring in 100 extras? It could have been either. The technology is that good.
Mm-hmm.
And for reference sake, what's good and how good right now? Because Jenny does video, I've been looking hard at the video stuff coming. No problem coming up with photorealistic stills. It's very hard to come up with more than 10 or 15 seconds of realistic video at this point. But that will change.
Mm-hmm.
We know that will change. I mean, on anything on AI, when you ask, can AI do so-and-so? Most of the time, the answer is either yes or not yet.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Right.
yet.
Right. No,
There's
how
something-
did it come out, Dave? You talked about the extras and what a big deal that was. You know, I know one of the things that the studios wanted to do was to be able to use the what they call the scans of extras, video scans, if you will, of extras after they passed, after they died, without any compensation going to the estate or the families of the actor. How did that come out?
Well, the studios wanted to use any image they have of an actor or an extra in another movie if they felt like it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely doable. So this is from Crabtree, Ireland, who was one of the actors negotiators. Whenever one of our companies is going to make a replica of an actor using digital technology, including AI, they have to actually disclose to the actor exactly what that replica is going to be used for. And the actor has a right to say yes or no to that. And if they say yes, they get compensated for it, none of which existed before. He continued, I think this is from the Hollywood Reporter. AI protection is going to extend to the use of any kind of image or likeness of deceased performers. So their estate or their heirs will have the ability to say yes or no to that. So there's a really robust set of protections for performers that he thinks will not only protect them during the trial of this contract, but for many years thereafter.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They had to go on strike for 118 days to get that. And yes, there were other issues like royalties on streaming and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But this was profound, and this is setting a precedent. It is absolutely clear that many, many people are going to lose their jobs because of technology. Overall, there may be as many jobs in the economy because it turns out there's other things like fiscal and monetary policy that has more to do with that. But we have to have a way to not destroy too many lives
Mm-hmm.
with the new
And
technology.
Dave, this is not just the people in front of the camera, but some of the people behind the camera as well who are going to be displayed. I'm thinking of the writers in particular. AI is going to have an impact on creative writers as well, is it not?
Well, there's a story I've told here on the air before. Jenny had to do a rough for what was going to be the promo for a reality television show. She was having a hard time coming up with ideas. So I threw it into one of the big AI programs. I think I used Claude, which has better style than the other ones in the writing. Gave it to her to give her some ideas. She looked at it, made a few changes, and the next day gave it to the client who bought it.
Mm.
And it was almost all.
Wow.
On the other hand, when I run all my writing through AI, it often finds mistakes in grammar and spelling and
This
phrasing.
is the reporting that you write about, Dave. Dave, of course, as our audience knows, is a technology and telecom journalist. So your typical story that you write, Dave, you run through AI.
I always run through AI, which sometimes finds spelling and grammar errors, sometimes finds
So
better ways.
it's
But
a
usually finds very
new
little.
wave spell check, huh? Nouveau
It's,
spell check. Wow. Go ahead.
it's spell check and then some.
Yeah.
Grammarly, incidentally, does a superb job of catching my grammatical mistakes as I'm typing.
Mm-hmm.
So they've already been taken care
Wait,
of.
in real time this is working?
Yeah, it's called Grammarly. The free version is very powerful. You just put it into your browser, and when you're sitting there, I do a lot of my writing in my email or on the web and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Correct grammar. It's all AI. Does a superb job. But that's another story. I can review it next time.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing I wanted to say here about whether it'll take writers, right now, everything that comes out of ChatGPT or Claude and so on is going to sound quite plausible, but fairly dull and boring. Because the way the computer comes up with the things it writes is it takes in billions and billions and trillions of words to find patterns in how things put up. And the result is when the computer writes something, it's loaded with cliches and without originality.
Mm-hmm.
So it really isn't as good as a professional writer, but it can do a lot of the work, not just checking. I could get an outline. If I wanted to write about, for example, chip production in China, I could get a story outline that could get me started. Some people are actually, including some major news organizations, who've been really disappointed I started actually using what comes straight from the computer, but it's not really there. It's very flat.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of how other people who are using this stuff, a number of college professors and high school teachers have talked about it. And again and again, they say, you know, the computer is as good as our average student. And that means they have to find a whole nother way of teaching because
Mm-hmm.
it's going to come, it's going to come in, it's coming in right now in volume and being done. Fortunately,
And we think that was addressed in the writers' strike settlement, the writing as well as the imagery.
uh, they came up with something, but I don't know the exact wording,
Mm-hmm.
and it's fairly weak. Uh, but it was a big issue there. On
Yeah.
the actors, the writers, frankly, are much better than the computer now, and probably for a few years at least. On acting, certainly an extra could be replaced today.
Mm-hmm.
And more replace the actual actors. The new Avatar is going to show us just how realistic some of this stuff is. He's taking 2 years in post-production, and he's going to have some incredible stuff, I think. Well, let's keep going on this.
Okay.
Yeah. What the other problem is that the AI makes a lot of mistakes.
Hallucinations, among other things, huh? Just make
They
stuff
call
up.
hallucinations, but that's nonsense. It's mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
period. We don't need a fancy word on it. How often do you think that happens?
One in 100.
3 in 100 to 10 in 100 on facts that have been fairly extensively checked by independent. Your takeaway on that is no, you cannot use it on anything where it matters to get it right without really checking it hard.
Mm.
And I've caught a lot of examples when I've had it several times. I've had it rewrite things of mine in a different style, and almost every time there was at least one substantial error there. It turns out ChatGPT has the fewest errors, and Google's Bard for the moment has the most. Now,
how do they quantify it, Dave? You threw out 2 or 3 in 100. Do they actually quantify it?
Yeah, they actually threw a whole pile of things for the computer to write about and had human beings go over them and see whether the mistakes were there.
But 2 or 3%, depending on what you're dealing with, that could be critical. You know, you're writing the trajectory for space launch, and if you're off 2 or 3%, that could be the difference between success and failure.
Or reading my MRI, which was done at Mount Sinai.
There you go, life and death. Yeah,
do it because they don't trust it yet. But it's getting close, and it's going to be used a lot in radiology. It's already being used in some places. As I said, Sinai is actually live testing just on ordinary patients every day. And that's what's going. Now, money. It's almost everybody in technology believes that what's happening in AI is the most important thing in technology in years, probably in their lifetimes. It is extraordinarily important. It is extraordinarily good. It is seriously limited. It couldn't possibly live up to the hype. So a few things I've been putting together. First, is it a good time to go to work in AI?
Brand new industry, I would say absolutely.
Well, story that came in. OpenAI is trying to get some of the really top people at Google to come over to OpenAI. Google has many of the best people in the world and has had for years. OpenAI is much smaller. It probably only has a few hundred engineers on their AI. They need more. And they got $10 billion of money from Microsoft to buy them. They are offering senior people. Junior people usually get a few $100,000. The senior people, they are offering bonuses to sign up of $5 to $10 million.
I'll say that again, Dave. How much? Five
Five
to
and
ten
million.
million dollar signing bonuses. This is for employees.
This is for the top employees, the kind of person who might be running a division at Google,
Mm-hmm.
or one of their best engineers, and so on.
Mm.
And that's in fact the article. And I have to apologize, I don't have the reference on there.
So Dave, give me a quick, 30-second, 1 minute primer as to what kind of background someone would have to work in AI. What are we talking about? We're talking about computer
More than
coding,
half.
computer science. What are we talking about?
Okay, you do not have to have any background to learn enough on prompting to get the computer to make a picture that you can use, for example, in a magazine illustration. Prompting is something you can learn. To do it well, it takes technique. Any of the work in actually creating AI, half the stuff I read is by people who either have a PhD or soon will.
In what?
Usually computer science,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes mathematics, sometimes cognitive science,
Mm-hmm.
and so on. It is hard. And there are hundreds of thousands, hundreds of thousands trying to get in, and tens of thousands doing very well in senior positions, which, as I say, I bet half of them either are graduate students or already have their PhD.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're hearing the enormous salaries which are there, and I'm sure this is true. It was reputable, but I've been seeing some of this stuff. Does that mean that it's a good idea to go get a PhD in artificial intelligence, as a reporter said? Yeah, in fact, this came from Stephanie Peluso, very good reporter at The Information. And she said, I know what I'd recommend today to somebody who has to decide what their career should be. And there's a kicker on that. It's clearly true that if you have AI skills today, you're going to do very, very well. Will that be true in 6 years from now when somebody gets their PhD? Maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many people are going for it and looking to get in.
Maybe a glut and talent at that point.
I remember seeing it when desktop publishing came in,
Mm-hmm.
and they were paying $50 an hour at the beginning, and 3 years later, every secretary was expected to be able to do it. And what's going to so you definitely shouldn't go into creating anything in AI as opposed to using the AI unless you really are comfortable with some heavy duty tech. And my linear algebra just is not as good, and my tensor calculus is worse. But those are the kinds of
Yeah, well,
things
you probably haven't used it in 40 years, Dave.
I never had an occasion to use linear algebra, and I
Mm-hmm.
hope I won't sleep through the classes.
Yeah, but your point is well taken, Dave. Right now, there's an incredible need for folks that are developing AI, but once it starts to mature, 5 years down the road, there's going to be some other something related to the application or some further development phase of this stuff that's going to require perhaps a whole new skill set.
Or it may, I don't know what it's going to require. And it may leave you in really great shape, and it may be a great thing. And you may make $1 million a year if you have a PhD in artificial intelligence 6 years from now. But you should go in knowing you may not, because so many others. Now, one of the things I just wrote related to this is, okay, AI is exploding, incredible opportunity. I'll absolutely confirm that. And tens of billions are being made already. They just got another 500 million for somebody building a model in Europe.
Mhm.
And Anthropic just raised another 3 or 4 billion. There's a lot of money being made. So a lot of people think we should start a company in this field. What do you think the chances are of succeeding? How many out of 100 companies being started now, how many do you think will fail?
90.
And that's the point I wanted to make.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that 80 or 90% are going to fail
Yeah.
because there are so many.
Mm-hmm.
And we just saw a whole wave of terror. As I reported on the show last week, there were huge advances being made at OpenAI with tuning and improving models to do particular things you want. And one of the news stories came across, and may have been Palooza, saying thousands of startups are now in trouble.
Yeah.
Because OpenAI has built something that can do what they're doing.
How about that? Yeah. Well, Dave,
How much
we're
time do
almost
we
out
have?
of time. We just got a minute or two left. Any parting thoughts you want to leave with our audience about either the earlier stuff we were talking about, hate speech, etc., and or AI?
Well, the hate speech, I just had to read it to you, and you can
Mhm.
decide for yourself. And I assure you it's coming from all sides. The lies, I also can assure you, are coming from all sides,
Mhm.
as they always do in wartime. We really did have a huge department of propaganda in the United States during World War II. And of course, that became the CIA,
Mhm.
or some part of it became the CIA. So these are things we all have to do. I'm in the middle of the AI stuff. I'm excited. I know it's doing great things, and I've heard some of them to the radio, but I also know it has some problems. And it couldn't possibly live up to the hype. For the next show, ask me the question, when do you think AI is going to be smarter than we are? And what do you think will happen? And my answer is going to start with, I don't know, but I'll be giving you some interesting
Yeah.
opinion.
Okay. Thanks. That's the long and short of it. This has been Community and Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem, every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Stay tuned. Just might learn something. Thanks.
Huh.
Good night.